Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filter and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial tech entrepreneur. I have 30 companies under my belt. I've failed at 20 of those, and I've scaled 10 to be big successes. I turned that roller coaster of a ride into a book, Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is my story of 30, 20, 10 and how I've always built custom software as a big difference maker in every company I've built. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We're a nearshore software development company. We help build enterprise level software. Today we are joined by Kumar Srivastava, who has, he has a cool background: engineer, author, board member, multi-time CTO, startup man. Kumar, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Very excited to be here.
I would list all the companies you've been involved with, but that would take up the whole show.
No, it's not that long. You've been nice. No, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. No,
Kumar, if you would, give our listeners a couple-minute overview of the journey of your career.
Sure. So I like building stuff. I like building software, solving problems with software. I started my career at Microsoft as an engineer working in cybersecurity. I then spent some time in online search. Then I moved to the Bay Area, joined a startup called Apigee, eventually was acquired by Google, that built API management platforms. And then I did a few other startups in cloud BI, analytics, in what else did I do? Supply chain, in merchandising, and now I spent some time at Bank of New York Mellon in financial services as an innovation center, and now I am at Turing Labs that is solving R&D formulations at scale problem for very large CPG companies. So a lot of mixture of technical tech products for B2B scenarios. I've done some B2C also at Microsoft. And then also the big common pattern has been applying machine learning at scale. Since my first job at Microsoft till now, every role has been about either data, analytics, machine learning, or purely machine learning driven solutions.
Gotcha. Now tell us more about Turing and what you guys do.
So Turing Labs is it's a tech startup that's focused on solving a very specific problem for CPGs. For CPGs, especially in food and beverage, personal care items, household supplies, the process is about getting a set of ingredients together and creating a formula that achieves the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. So if you're building a food product, you want people to like it. It should taste good. It should have some nutritional profiles that you're targeting. Or if you're building, let's say laundry detergent, you want it to clean, you want it to smell good. So these are called outcomes. And the typical process of designing these products is, somebody comes in with a lot of experience. They take a guess at what that formula should be. They put it together in the lab. They go test it and they measure it. And then based on the measurements, they decide what to tweak, what to change. So as you can imagine, it's a very slow process. It's expensive. You have to actually build that sample in a lab and then test it. For testing, you have to hire people or use expensive machines that can do what are called analyticals. Overall, the process is very slow, expensive. And then, if you test bad ideas, all of that is a waste, right? And so what we are doing is we're bringing data and machine learning to this problem by saying we will eliminate wasted time, effort, investment by using the power of predictions and the power of optimization to find solutions, potential formulas that achieve the objectives with the least amount of iterations, the least amount of experiments, with a system that learns and ensures that whatever it suggests you to test is designed to maximize information gain. And we use probabilistic modeling, we use optimization search, and a lot of proprietary machine learning and GenAI capabilities to enable this. So we build a software as a service. Our customers and their users log in. They say, I want to make a better salsa. We guide them through the entire process. We generate suggestions for them. They leverage them. They take it to the labs. They build it. They upload data back into our system. We learn from it. And then we tell them either they have achieved their goals or we give them the next set of limited experiments to maximize what we can learn so that we can get them to a formula that achieves their goals.
Gotcha. Very cool. Now, how did you land your role as CTO here?
So it's a good question. I was... I'd been at a role for a few years, and Turing Labs reached out. They told me about the problem, and I have to admit, before Turing Labs, I would walk into a grocery store and I would not pay even a second of attention to how did that product land on those shelves. Once I got to understand the intricate process that occurs before you can get something into the market and into the shelves, I was extremely
It changes your
enlightened.
perspective, huh?
Changed the perspective. It was not, and then what I realized was this was the first time in my career I could apply machine learning to a physical product. For what I had been doing so far was building software for software, right? So these are software products, and then how do you use other software to make those software products better? So APIs, as an example, which helps you make apps. We were building software to make APIs better, but this was the first time the software was actually going to make to make an actual product that somebody will eventually buy and consume better. That I felt was a higher bar for quality. It was a higher bar of innovation, given that people ingest the stuff and they use it every day. So it was super exciting. Yeah, they reached out and I met Manmeet. Had a super. He's a founder CEO. Amazing conversation, and now here we are. It's been a year and a half or so since I've been in this role.
How did you guys get connected? Did you apply online? Did you know somebody? Was there an external recruiter?
It was an exec recruiter that reached out that was working with Turing Labs.
Gotcha. So I always like to, ask CTOs that is being a CTO is a pretty tough job. You have to manage down, manage up, make complex engineering format that somebody's grandmother can understand. So your board and investors and others can quantify what you're doing. And CTO, especially the past couple of years, it's been a challenging role. So I always like to ask guests how they got their role, because I know, there's always a lot of people looking or have gone through tough times. And so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. I think, I would say it's a combination of things I've done in my career. I've played software engineer roles, architect roles, data scientist roles, product manager roles, customer success, IT, cybersecurity. So I've done a lot of these pieces that eventually a CTO has to worry about. And so that perspective and that experience has created that combination of factors. So I can have a perspective on all of these very disparate things while building, in a early stage company like Turing Labs, the role is all about making decisions that'll pay off in the next quarter and in a couple of years from now. And really what you're trying to do is build a product that a customer cares to buy and invest in. Balancing, when is the right time to apply what technology? Is the technology really needed? Being oriented into a product mindset, which is, I've done product roles in the past. That's really the main concern at this stage, is to make sure that everything that we do is designed to move the product forward. And the only evidence of that is customers either purchasing, renewing, or expressing satisfaction with what we're doing, and us getting organic growth within an account where we are able to solve deeper and adjacent problems because of the technology and the solution we offer.
Now, did you join before or after the Series A funding occurred?
I joined after.
Okay. Gotcha. Would you, based on the, what you've done in your career, where you've gone, would you join a company before that stage where there's maybe some more risk? They're just at the seed level or pre-seed?
I've done this so many times now. I've joined startups at different shapes and sizes that the concern I used to have about, it's too early stage. I've also, created my own company myself, invested my own money in it. So I've seen that also, and that's sort of the maximum amount of risk where I'm taking on the risk financially also. And so at this point, it stopped bothering me. That risk is not a factor. I like the fact that in these roles, and an earlier stage, the better. Every ounce of effort I put in, if I believe that I know, or I have a good idea of what the right thing to do is, and I can execute on that, that's the strategy to eliminate risk or to mitigate the risk of early. The risk only comes when you're building something that is not required, or you're building something that for which it's too soon to be a market. And so being a good listener, understanding where your customers are and meeting them where they are and not where the technology demands of them, I think are some strategies that I have figured out that helps me or gives me the confidence that I can handle the risk, because the risk is of executing incorrectly or not executing. And if I can execute and execute correctly, at that point, the market has to shift, or the problem has to be so complex that we run out of money. But again, those things can also be managed. But as long as you have a really good perspective on what you're solving and why. Right now the rage is GenAI and LLMs. So one of the fun projects is we are trying to push the limits of what can we do with these tools internally. For everything from defining what we need to do, doing research, generating code, generating tests. You really have to we're really changing how things are done. It's even things like hiring is changing, because knowing how to physically write code is not a skill, or it's not as valuable as a skill as it used to be. Right? Now it's about, can you understand code? So people who were really good code reviewers, ironically, become the best developers now, because they can have the code written by an LLM and they can review that code and make it go higher in quality. So everything's changed. I think we're working with several CPGs, doing very complex product development. We're working on even cool ideas like transfer learning. So if you've solved a product, if you've reformulated something in the past, what can we learn from it? So we can speed up the process for the next product or project that you're working on. We're looking at, we're playing, at multiple levels, at the core technical levels. There are all sorts of different algorithms and techniques that are coming out in academia that we want to bring to market to maintain our advantage of our tech stack. Similarly, we have opportunities to attack several adjacent problems that exist that digitally transform these enterprises, these large CPGs, to be more agile in their thinking, not just in formulating, but the entire product launch process. How to be more innovative, more agile, faster. So we're thinking through capabilities in that area. But everything comes down to, and this is the common thread, large enterprises are slower, not because they physically make decisions slower than startups. The amount of information that's required to make a good decision where they actually matter is a lot more and lot more fragmented the longer the history of a company. And so finding information so that you can make the informed decision is harder in larger companies because it's spread, it's fragmented. And so we've seen this problem. I've seen it when we were doing digital transformation with APIs and application development in the early 2010s. And now I'm seeing it again with data and AI. It used to be that you would spend all your time training machine learning models. Then foundational models arrived, and now most enterprises don't have to spend any time training machine learning models. But the onus now shifts to what data do you have that differentiates your decisions from somebody else that has access to the same LLM. That means they can get the same insights and the same research. So now the value of your own internal data goes up. And because it's fragmented, because it's not in a state, it becomes harder to use. I'm coming back to the same problem where how do we make sure information in the enterprise is easily accessed, encoded, and leveraged for making these decisions in this world of LLMs and GenAI.
So talk to me about your engineering team. How many engineers do you have? What model do you guys follow? Are you in office, hybrid, remote?
Yeah, so we're a small, tightly knit team. We are hybrid. We have engineers across the US. We have some engineers in South America. We have some engineers in India. We split between front-end, full-stack engineers and machine learning engineers and through data scientists. We have a DevOps role. We have QA. But a small team. And we leverage agile methodologies. So, basic sprint planning and execution. But we've realized that for us to be faster, one of the differentiators we have is the speed of our execution. And so we often feel that even the 2-week-long sprints sometimes can be in our ability to move quickly, because a lot of things that we can do can be done in smaller timeframes. We basically split our work into larger capabilities that require multiple sprints, and we plan for them. And then we have items that can be dealt with in a 1 day, 2 day, sub a day, and we use a more Kanban style list of that, where we have incoming requests and issues from customers, and a subset of the team knocks them out as fast as they can, whereas a subset is focused on longer term investments.
Gotcha. Now, you guys have some software job postings out there right now. And one of the particular things you said is you're looking for somebody who's willing to work 6 days a week. Talk to me about that. What are you guys doing over there?
Yeah, it's really about not about the number of hours, right? I think I have been at many startups, and when you're truly understand the uh, going back to the risk discussion, right? It's all about execution, execution and course correction. And the more the unfair advantage that a startup has on anyone else or even among startups is how fast can you learn and how fast can you improve and iterate. And
Yep.
so, everyone has the same amount of time. What matters is your ability to move faster than someone else who's doing the same, who's solving the same problem. And so what we look for is an attitude of that if there is a problem that you understand needs to be fixed, that you will not rest till it's fixed. And so it doesn't matter whether it's 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, or 4 days. It's outcomes matter, right? So as soon as we've identified a problem, if we understand what is a reasonable amount of time to fix it, and we're not able to fix it in that amount of time, there's something broken. Either we have too many problems and we haven't either properly prioritized, or we are not spending the energy required to solve them at the right speed. And so it's really the job description. What it's really saying is we want people who understand the magnitude of the problems that we are solving and are not afraid to put in the effort that's required to fix it, because that's the only advantage we have. I think people think that startups have, magical, engineers who are much better than the engineers in other companies, or, they have magically, they can make faster decisions. What startups have is that their coordination time is much lower. They're able to get together, figure out what the problem is, find the subset that matter, and then execute on it. And so for that requires being flexible with the time.
All right. So this is a strategy to try to weed out the type of people that are applying. You don't want the guy that's going to try to work 2 or 3 jobs. You don't want somebody who's not aggressive and doesn't understand the startup mentality and willing to put it in. So you're not really looking for them to work 6 days a week. It's more of the mentality, the attitude.
Yeah, what we want, I would say, we want 6 days of output from a 5-day week. Right, that's what the outcomes matter. Now, if you pick the right outcomes, then the impact of them being delivered is massive. If you pick the wrong outcomes or the wrong deliverables, then even 7 days of work will not solve the point, won't move the needle. So we want people who can understand what problems matter and then focus on fixing them, such that the outcome of the entire effort feels like it's a lot more than the amount of time that went into it. So how we solve which problems we pick to solve, the techniques or the methodology we use to solve them, all of that determines how well and how quickly the outcomes can be achieved. And then, that's really what we want. Is we don't want someone coming in, clocking in 6 days of work. We want someone to produce the outcome that an average engineer would take 6 days in 4 days, 3 days, right? If you can do that, then you can have a 3-day weekend. It doesn't really matter if you're producing the outcomes that someone else would take multiple days.
Well, and you also put in that job ad, you guys have integrated tools like Cursor and Windsurf and others. So engineers' productivities should be high. So I like it. That's a unique approach to get the right mentality in there. Now, so you guys are a startup. You've completed Series A funding. You guys are focused on growth. What are the biggest challenges or things slowing that down or standing in the way right now?
I think it's really for us to outpace our competitors, people who are solving similar problems. So we just have to be faster and better at solving the right problems at a faster pace. I think the market is there. Every time we talk to customers every day, customers and prospects. And the problem is acute. The biggest problem for CPGs in general to launch products is that they don't have sufficient bandwidth. So they can only make a finite number of bets every year. And planning takes multiple months when it should take weeks. Execution takes multiple weeks when it should take days. And so we are really here the problem has been, I think we have product market fit. We need to figure out all the reasons why a solution like ours is not, cannot be adopted at the pace we want. And we want to go after those reasons and make the software better, easier, faster, and simpler to use and integrate. And so it's really, our blocker is our ability to execute faster. The market is there. Customers are willing to pay us money for the solution that we have. We have to make sure our solution scales. The interesting thing is the SaaS business model itself, that shifting and that changing.
That's under fire right now.
That's under fire. And that is interesting. So that's a big, I would say, a blocker, because that whole approach of selling, of licensing, of building, of operating, it used to be that you want to have a multi-tenant service that had all your customers as tenants in this one, distributed, highly reliable setup. But if you're not charging by the SaaS licensing model where you make higher margins because you have multiple customers running on the same infra, maybe that's not required anymore, right? Maybe there's single tenant installations that might be better and more profitable because you can size them appropriately for a customer's usage and what they are paying for, that you can guarantee the entire service reliability to one customer because they're the only tenant on that infrastructure. So I think there are these changes in the business model, changes in for the availability of LLMs that can do a lot of some of this research at a very easily offer that capability. I think they change how the business or most software businesses work. That's probably going to be a factor, not in limiting our growth, but rather in us figuring out the right model for this space. But that doesn't mean that doesn't change the fact that our formulators, our actual users, they need to spend less time formulating, and we want to make it more efficient for them. The problem still stays. How we bring it to market might have to change.
Well, and things are definitely moving fast, to say the least. So, Kumar, you're a guy that's been involved in a lot of ventures. What's one brutal lesson you wish you would have learned earlier in your career?
I actually learned the brutal lesson, and not personally, because I was part of the team. I was a junior engineer in long time ago, and I would go into the details of the company. But the brutal lesson that I was that you can make data look and sound like anything you want to justify whatever decision you want. And I was a first-hand participant in that happening, and nobody questioning it, nobody course correcting it, and accepting the story that the data was telling as fact. And I think that entire effort, several people were all involved in that. And then that entire effort eventually had to be shut down because if the premise was incorrect. It was using faulty conclusions from high quality data, but faulty conclusions to justify the means, as opposed to creating a hypothesis that had to be tested. And a lot of stuff was planned around that faulty understanding of that information as market research. And products were built that avoided or that ignored the reality of the cost of doing business, and a product was brought to market that was not profitable. It did not have the margins to support it, and ironically, it was the support costs that broke the business model, which was not accounted for. And yeah, that was a pretty brutal lesson. I think that still, you asked the question and instantly lit up in my brain. I was like, oh, that's the one that I should talk about.
I think the lesson is
important.
Outcomes matter.
Outcomes matter, and you have to be able to course correct quickly. Don't go too far in where you reduce your options to recover.
Well, Kumar, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. You're definitely one of those rare leaders who's a doer, not just somebody who talks about it. Before we wrap up, any final advice you have for tech leaders out there who are trying to build, scale, or just survive?
I'm on the same board. I think my advice would be, we have to keep up with what's happening. There's no point resisting change. I think the adopters of the change, the ones who do it sooner, have just more time. It's like the same thing like startups. Your runway is the amount of time that you have to adapt. If you adapt earlier, then your runway is extended and you can learn. You have more time to learn. So I think, it's really about, I think we are in this interesting time where every month the world is different because of GenAI. I think things probably settle down.
Saying every month because it's probably every week.
That's right. So things will settle down eventually, and we'll figure out what the next business model that's going to sustain itself for some more time will be. We'll figure out how to build solutions with it. We'll figure out what skills are required to operate in this world, and then eventually education institutions and training spaces will also pick up on that. And so it'll take some time for the situation to stabilize. I think leaders have to just be aware of the changes and be willing to adapt, or at least experiment, so you understand what works, what doesn't, for your 6-month time frame. And I think planning for 6 months at a time is probably longer than sufficient, longer than needed. It should be lower, but at least 6 months.
So be aware, be patient, and be ready to adapt. I like it.
That's right.
All right, Kumar, thank you. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you like the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't like it, well, kiss my butt. Tell your competitors about it. They could probably use the help. Remember to fail hard, win big, and make sure you build what matters. Till next time.
That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.